Hey folks, it's no time to yield. We just hit 1,000 members in my Patreon community. We have 115,000 on TikTok. We have 25,000 on Instagram, and we just cleared 2,700 on YouTube, I think. That means something. It's not about me, though. This is about maybe not being just a loose network of public historians and educators and concerned citizen historians anymore. Maybe we really are a battalion in the fight for honest history. Because let's be clear, this is no time for backpatting, so this ain't about me, and it's certainly not time for inaction. Be inspired by some posts by mutuals of mine, Girl Henry Rollins, Rachel Gary Williams. I've been thinking all weekend, this long President's Day weekend, about the immediate near-term and long-term fallout of the complete assault on honest history, this first wave. Call it discriminatory equity ideology, call it whatever they want. It's a smokescreen. They've gone after K through 12 education, brought back the 1776 mission, created Task Force 250, gutted the National Archives, and sidelined the Archivist of the United States. Think about it. Everything the Archivist does, including certifying the Electoral College results, is now in the hands of Marco Rubio. It's literally an arm of the state. They're continuing to carve up the National Park Service. They're turning the National Endowment for the Arts into an America 250 propaganda machine and obliterating the NEH as we knew it. The Kennedy Center takeover was cultural shock value at its most blunt. The Smithsonian's next, especially the National Museum of African American History and Culture and the National Museum of the American Indian. And I'm fairly confident the Library of Congress and even Wikipedia are not far behind. Our cultural landscape is already unrecognizable from just a matter of weeks ago, and it will not snap back to what it was before January 2025. Public historians, at least the way I teach it, are one part historian, one part storyteller, and now one part spy, all rolled into one. We figure out which histories are real and which are bogus. We bring them to life for our audiences. And we keep an eye on what the other side, those who are peddling dishonest history, what they're doing. Right now, that other side is defunding any academic historian, any public historian, any researcher, any museum, any historic site, any park that doesn't play to their mythic narrative. If you relied on federal dollars, think about our park rangers and all that's being lost, our archaeologists. If you relied on federal dollars, even the ones that flow through state and local sources, even the ones that flow through nonprofits that come from originally from those federal coffers, consider gone. If you need the National Archives, including the 15 presidential libraries, brace yourself for restricted access, for there to be a litmus test about your project and how it is framed for you to get at the sources that you thought were yours by right of you being a citizen. And if you think that you'll dodge this storm, remember, all public historians, amateur, pro, armchair, in the field, rely on the scholarship of others and the continuing of that scholarship to build the historiography. That pillar is crumbling. They are banning anything that talks about gender or sexuality. They're just labeling it gender ideology. But it's broader than that. Anything that doesn't center whiteness. This is the shorthand for anything, right? It's got to center cisgender whiteness. And anything that doesn't do that gets filed under discriminatory equity ideology, a term that still doesn't really exist. It's just a fiction that they create as an excuse, as a pseudo-intellectual boogeyman. And they've effectively criminalized the study of environmental justice. So if your history doesn't put white men, cisgender white men of European descent into the spotlight, or if you want to talk about non-white people, it better still be in the service of that group, then you are on the hit list. You are doing rogue history now. And if these stories vanish, then what are we left with? We're left with a state-approved mythology that they call patriotic education. And of course, it's not education at all. It's not even history. It's a pseudo-history tsunami. But we are not powerless. Marc Bloch, a historian and resistance fighter, whom I, for obvious reasons, think about a lot these days, once said over his grave, quote, "I hold that any compromise with untruth, no matter what the pretext, is the mark of a human soul's ultimate corruption." He wanted delexit veritatem over his grave, to love the truth. That's what was in that 57-year-old's mind as he was fighting the Nazis and then murdered by the Gestapo. If we're a battalion, this is our fight. And we won't stand down. We will fight smarter. We will fight harder. We will pool resources. We will share expertise. And we will adapt to shoestring budgets. Public historians are used to that. We are inherently collaborative. We are inherently disciplinarian. We are inherently creative with our resources. We can keep archival access alive where we can, maybe even expand our own research and sharing our research resources that we have collected and kept. But we can also go on the digital offensive. Like, comment, share real, honest history to keep it pumping through the algorithms. But understand those algorithms and how they work, by the way. How the algorithm for Instagram, for instance, differs from TikTok's. I highly recommend following Taylor Lorenz and reading her book Extremely Online to understand the dynamics of the digital ecosystem. But tag, question, challenge, report the propaganda and the propaganda ads that flood your Instagram feeds, for example, so they are wasting their money. So Hillsdale College has to spend more to get their message out. We'll call out institutions that quietly cave, the Mount Vernons, the museums of the American Revolution of the world, and bother their social media managers. If they sanitize their representation of the past to fit the nationalist narrative, we speak up. We make appeasement costly. Now isn't the moment to lament what we've lost. It's the moment to turn our anger into action. Even a single share, like, or comment can be a tiny act of resistance. Multiply that by 1,000 living rooms. Multiply that by 147,500 living rooms. And you've got a genuine defense. Now, I don't love using military terms. I didn't like the Army, and it didn't like me. But here we are. If we're truly a battalion, then we should remember Tennyson's words of an aging hero who refused to yield. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved heaven and earth, that which we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, not to yield. We may not have the same resources we had before, but we have each other. We're stronger in will, and we will not yield. Let's rise as historians, storytellers, and spies for the truth, and fight this pseudo-history tsunami with everything we've got.